Hey, bring me some tea now, demanded John. Hold on, I'm doing the dishes, she replied, trying to balance the plates in the sink. What is it? Stop that and bring me the tea quickly. Can't you follow my orders? John's tone grew impatient. But she hesitated, glancing at the pile of dishes waiting to be cleaned. What a useless wife you are, remarked her mother-in-law. Make me some sweet coffee, please. But there are so many dishes to do, she pleaded, feeling overwhelmed. Leave them for later. Just do what we say, useless wife, John's mother added sharply. As she stood there, torn between the demands of her husband, John, and her imposing mother-in-law, she couldn't help but feel trapped in their expectations. John lounged in the living room, engrossed in his phone, acting as if he owned the place. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law sat at the kitchen table, maliciously eyeing me while indulging in a cake she had taken from the fridge. She could have easily made her own coffee, but she seemed to relish bossing me around, finding pleasure in making demands. I'm Hannah, a 30-year-old working mother. I married at 25, had a child, and returned to work soon after. Currently, we live with my husband, our 4-year-old son, my mother-in-law, and my husband's parents in their house. We moved in with her because John insisted. He told me how devastated my mother-in-law was after my father-in-law passed away, saying she couldn't eat properly. Concerned, I hoped living together would lift her spirits. Strangely, her mood seemed to improve considerably once I arrived. Now, she seemed to delight in finding ways to dominate me, her eyes gleaming like a predator fixated on its prey. I used to worry about her well-being, but now I question if it was ever necessary. I've cooked meals that she never thanked me for, only to find them abandoned in the sink later. She frequently criticizes my cooking, complaining about the seasoning or how I prepare dishes. I've often wished she would just take care of her own meals, but it seems she has no interest in doing any housework herself. This stir-fry seems half-hearted. I can't eat this. Make it properly from scratch, she demanded. I'm busy and can only manage simple dishes, I replied, trying to keep calm. That's why I hate it when daughters-in-law talk back. I said, cook it from scratch. If you have so many complaints, why don't you cook? You're a good cook, aren't you? I retorted, frustrated. What are you saying? Why should I do housework when you're here? Have you lost your mind? No more than you, I muttered under my breath, feeling the tension rise between us. What's with that tone? You're so irritating. My mother-in-law snapped. When I retorted slightly, her face flushed red with anger. Concerned that her anger might affect her health, I decided to ignore her. After that, both my husband and mother-in-law's attitudes toward me began to change. Their arrogance gave way to silence. They stopped speaking to me altogether. Hey, have you brought your lunchbox out yet? I need to wash it, my mother-in-law called out. I acknowledged, trying to keep my composure. Hey, I'm talking to you. Please don't leave candy wrappers lying around. They'll attract bugs, she continued, her voice more insistent. I responded vaguely, sensing the shift in their behavior towards me. Are you even listening? She pressed. I muttered again, feeling increasingly isolated in my own home. They began to completely disregard me. I felt utterly depleted, like I was interacting with someone who couldn't comprehend anything I said. I questioned why I had to endure living with such a person, yet I couldn't bring myself to consider divorce. I believed our young son still needed his father. And so 5 years passed. Both my husband and I turned 35, and our son was now 9. My mother-in-law was 65. How much longer will I have to endure this kind of life? I feel invisible. It's as if my existence doesn't matter at all. I feel utterly absurd, I muttered to myself on my way home from work. At home, the only person who spoke to me was my son. If even he were to reject me, I feared I would truly become superfluous. I felt a profound sadness, as if I were deemed unnecessary in this world. Upon arriving home, I immediately began cooking. Everyone must be hungry, I thought, opting to prepare a spread of delicious Chinese dishes. I whipped up mapo tofu, crispy fried chicken, and a colorful stir-fry with bell peppers and sliced pork. However, John surprised me by requesting mayonnaise for his fried chicken. After what felt like an eternity of silence, he finally spoke up. Bring me the mayo. Sure, here you go, I replied, retrieving the mayonnaise from the fridge and handing it to him. His first words to me in a long while weren't a compliment on the meal or a thank you, but a simple demand. I felt increasingly frustrated. Then my mother-in-law turned to me with a malicious expression. "Clean the toilet," she ordered, her tone cutting through the air with disdain. "What? Clean the toilet right now," my mother-in-law demanded abruptly. "I'll do it later. Please don't bring that up while we're eating. It's unpleasant," I replied, trying to keep my composure. "What?" Her voice hardened. "Just like your heart." "What? You really know how to get under my skin, don't you?" I retorted. My mother-in-law erupted in anger, pushing her dishes aside and storming back to her room, screaming in frustration. I couldn't fathom why she had the audacity to demand I clean the toilet during a meal. It seemed like she just wanted to antagonize me. Didn't she find it distasteful and inappropriate to bring up such things during dinner? If she were reasonable, she wouldn't have said it at all. When I pushed back a little, my mother-in-law became angry, prompting my husband to intervene and demanded apology. "What the hell are you saying to my mom? Apologize," he insisted. "No, why should I?" I retorted, bewildered. "So, after 5 years, that's all you have to say?" His tone was accusatory. "You think you are?" "I'm your husband, so don't talk back," he asserted firmly. "Oh, so now you care about being a husband," I scoffed. "If I had been treated better, maybe I would have acted more like a wife should. But you've ignored me all along. Why did you do that?" "Because of your attitude. I thought you needed to be taught a lesson," John replied defensively. I see. It doesn't matter to me," I replied coolly. "Hey, where do you think you're going?" "I've lost my appetite. I'm going back to my room," John declared, pushing his plate away. I finished my meal in silence and quickly retreated to my room. Ever since our relationship with John had grown cold, we'd been sleeping in separate bedrooms. I opened my laptop and accessed divorce papers online. It's amazing how convenient it is these days. You don't even need to go to the courthouse. I swiftly filled them out and placed them in front of John. "Hey, I'm going to file these," I announced firmly. "Oh, what's this?" John exclaimed, surprised. "As you can see, they're divorce papers," I replied calmly. "Wait, divorce? Are you serious?" John appeared flustered, his disbelief evident. I remained composed. John might have assumed he'd never face divorce papers, but I had reached my limit. Living in the same house with my in-laws had become unbearable. Even if we moved out, I doubted our relationship could improve. He showed no signs of changing, and I couldn't muster the confidence to keep trying. "Why are you suddenly bringing up divorce? This isn't like you," John questioned, struggling to comprehend the situation. "You always took me for granted and ignored me, didn't you? I've reached my limit. I don't see any reason to stay with you anymore, so I want to end it," I asserted firmly. "What? Are you saying you're going to leave me?" "I don't know what to say," John responded, visibly taken aback. At that time, John was unemployed. He had previously worked in a corporate job but had been fired due to multiple issues. Despite his efforts to find new employment, he seemed to have lost his motivation. It felt like I was the one supporting him financially. John used to boast about providing for me and our child, especially during my maternity leave. However, it was just that, a leave, not unemployment. His superiority complex often injured me. I funded our baby's needs like clothes and formula from my own savings, and it seemed like he didn't care about our child at all. John used to be so arrogant, but now that he's unemployed and dependent on me for support, leaving would create difficulties, especially since his mother, my mother-in-law, isn't receiving any pension. His father, who was self-employed, apparently avoided paying into a pension fund, leaving them ineligible for survivors' benefits. Despite being 65, he hasn't received any old age pension because his father considered it a waste. But didn't you anticipate this trouble when he wasn't contributing to his pension? What do you plan to do, leaving us in this situation? John questioned anxiously. "I'll live with our son, just the two of us. It's simpler that way," I replied calmly. "I won't allow it. Please give me custody. You're unemployed now. You can't support him without working. I've been the one supporting this household, but I want to be with Jacob. Just give me custody," John insisted. "Don't act so righteous when you've never truly cared about Jacob," I countered, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on us. While we argued, my mother-in-law emerged from her bedroom, her voice rising in anger. "Who do you think you are? You're so selfish. Don't you have any desire to contribute to this household?" she accused. "No, I don't," I retorted defiantly. "Don't talk back. You're just a daughter-in-law. If you leave, how are we supposed to manage? She continued, her frustration evident. Why don't you ask your boyfriend to lend you some money? I countered sharply. What? Her expression turned to shock. You're seeing Mr. Brown from 3 houses down, aren't you? He's wealthy, lives in a mansion, and even has housekeepers, I stated boldly. How do you know that? Her tone was a mix of disbelief and apprehension. I saw you and Mr. Brown the other day, holding hands, enjoying a date. You both disappeared into the busy downtown area. You even did something quite inappropriate, I said, holding up my phone. What? She stammered, her face paling. Can I show this to his wife? She would be furious, I pressed, revealing the photo I had taken. Stop it. Her anger flared as she saw the image. My mother-in-law was having an affair with Mr. Brown, a wealthy man from our neighborhood who lived in a mansion with several housekeepers. His wife was a refined, lovely lady. I'm certain his wife would explode if she saw this photo. Even the most seemingly gentle wife wouldn't stay silent upon discovering her husband was dating a neighbor. Both Mr. Brown and my mother-in-law are in their 60s. It seems my mother-in-law approached him because of his wealth. Can you believe I was ordered to clean the toilet while eating by such a despicable person? I vented. Well, look who's talking. Someone who's so dirty could use a mealtime bathroom cleaning. I guess I'll have to inform his wife now, she retorted with a sneer. Stop it, I exclaimed. Oh, sorry. I actually already told her, she confessed. What? I gasped, shocked by her audacity. I have her email address, you know. She's a yoga teacher, right? I attended one of her classes and we exchanged emails. Actually, I've already sent the photo, I declared. No, my mother-in-law exclaimed in horror. Yes, shortly after, Mr. Brown's wife arrived. She was a graceful elderly woman, her cheeks usually pale but now flushed bright red with anger. You've been seeing my husband, she accused my mother-in-law. That's, Hannah told me how despicable you are. My mother-in-law attempted to defend herself. But I was lonely, she pleaded, her voice tinged with desperation. I don't care about your circumstances. I'm furious. While I'm divorcing my husband, you were also to blame. Reflect on your actions, Mr. Brown's wife declared sternly. It's all this daughter-in-law's fault. If she had just... My mother-in-law's voice cracked with tears or sniffles, but Mr. Brown's wife remained unforgiving. I felt a pang of sympathy seeing my mother-in-law crying and slumped at the entrance, but I knew this wasn't the time for sympathy. If I show kindness now, she'll only become arrogant again and repeat the same mistakes. Look at what your actions have done. Mom is in a terrible situation because of you, Hannah interjected, her tone apologetic yet firm. I'm not the one who should apologize. I won't, my mother-in-law retorted defiantly. You insolent woman, apologize this instant, Hannah demanded. I refuse, her mother-in-law shot back stubbornly. Amidst our argument, Mr. Brown's wife intervened, addressing me directly. Hannah, you're planning to leave your husband, aren't you? Yes, because I've been treated terribly all this time, I replied, my frustration evident. In that case, you should proceed decisively. Your husband, he's involved with our young maid, she disclosed calmly. What? I exclaimed in disbelief. I saw them today. Your husband and our maid were holding hands, behaving inappropriately on the street, she continued, her tone resolute. What are you saying? Believe it or not, my foolish husband John was having an affair with one of the maids from the Browns' house. They had several maids working for them, but he got involved with the youngest one, and it seems things had become quite intimate, I recounted bitterly. I was already considering divorce due to his mistreatment and neglect of me. Now, on top of everything, his infidelity had been exposed, I continued, feeling the surge of anger. At this point, I felt there was no option left but to bring him down. He was someone I once loved, but now he's nothing more than a burden to me. A man like him is no role model for our child, I reflected bitterly. Why didn't I decide to divorce him sooner? I deeply regret it, but there's no point in crying over spilled milk now. You're the worst, John. I will never forgive you. You need to pay child support. Wait a minute, I'm unemployed, John protested weakly. So what? You still have some savings, don't you? You can use that to pay child support, I insisted. If I do that, I'll be left with nothing. Are you really okay with me ending up on the streets? John pleaded. We're parting ways, so whatever happens to you is no longer my concern, I retorted coldly. You're heartless. After treating me so coldly all this time, you have the nerve to say that. I don't care anymore. I'm leaving, I declared, immediately starting to pack with my son. Staying in that house any longer felt like it would drive me insane, so I decided to return to my parents' house. John attempted to stop me, but I ignored him. Regardless of his protests, I was determined to go through with the divorce. In the end, he refused to sign the divorce papers, leading to a contentious legal battle. Eventually, the court recognized his responsibilities and he was ordered to pay damages. I also pursued child support, which he managed to pay off in a lump sum. Apparently, he borrowed the money to settle it, I concluded. As a result, my vindictive mother-in-law was sued for damages by Mrs. Brown. With no pension or other income, she reluctantly took up part-time work to pay off her debts. For someone who had never worked and spent her days idling at home, the transition to labor was a significant challenge for my mother-in-law. She started with cleaning jobs, often receiving reprimands from her coworkers for slacking off. Her second job at a cash register brought sarcastic comments from young college students, a role she had never experienced before. Having previously lived a leisurely life without contributing to her husband's business, she was now facing the harsh realities of society firsthand. Meanwhile, I moved back to my parents' home for a while, but later found a great apartment near my office and decided to move there. It's a comfortable living arrangement for me and my son, with nothing to complain about. I asked my son if he missed his father, but he simply replied, "Not at all." It made me realize that divorcing him sooner might have spared our son from negative influences. Moving forward, I'm committed to working hard in every aspect of life to ensure my son never has to endure hardships. I'm going back to my parents' place for a while, I said. If that's the case, don't bother coming back, my husband snapped. Here's the divorce papers. They're already filled out. Take them and get out. He threw the papers at me, and without a word, I took them and went straight to City Hall to submit them. Little did he know, he would soon regret this decision. My name is Jessica, and I am 28 years old. I had been married to Bob, who is 30, for a year. Before our marriage, I worked as a freelance graphic designer from home, while Bob worked in the sales department. I met Bob 2 years ago when I was feeling down after a breakup. A friend introduced us, and although I wasn't looking to date anyone, Bob had already fallen for me after seeing my pictures. I don't mind starting as friends, he said, asking me out. During our outings, Bob's kindness won me over, and before I knew it, I had fallen in love with him. Once I shared my feelings, we started dating. 6 months later, Bob proposed and we got married. Jessica, you're a lucky woman. You've been chosen by me, the ace salesperson at the company, chased by many girls. Bob would often boast after we got married. Indeed, he was the star of the sales department and quite handsome. However, his constant bragging started to bother me. At the time, though, I found it endearing. Love is indeed blind. I adored my confident, kind, and strong husband Bob. Though we hadn't yet started a family, I cherished every moment spent with him. However, a year into our marriage, I encountered a problem. Jessica, when will I get to see my grandchild? That was my mother-in-law. From the moment we married, she began pressing us about starting a family every time we visited. Given that their house was just a short 15-minute drive away, we ended up having dinner there several times a month, enduring her persistent reminders. We're still young, and we want to enjoy our time together a bit longer, I replied. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law let out an audible sigh. You say you're young, but you'll be 30 soon. I'll give you another year, but that's it. You should start having babies soon. It won't get any easier. When I married into this family, I got pregnant right away. Besides, you're just sitting around at home, aren't you? It seemed my mother-in-law had never really acknowledged my job since before I married Bob, perhaps because few work-from-home options existed back then. Furthermore, the reason we hadn't started a family yet was because Bob insisted on us enjoying more time together, just the two of us. No, that's not true. I work diligently from home. I've told you before, I earn nearly as much as Bob, I argued. Isn't Bob just covering for you? You're just fooling around, she retorted. That's not true. Bob, please say something, I pleaded. Huh? Oh, Bob seldom intervened in these situations. According to him, There's no point arguing with Mom. She doesn't listen, so it's a waste of time. Just let her talk and don't take it too seriously. Even though I was upset, I wished he would stand up for me more. Instead, he sat on the couch, absorbed in his phone, barely engaging in the conversation. Well, you can play around all you want, but since you have so much time on your hands, you should fulfill your duties as a wife. If you don't have a baby within this year, I may have to ask you to leave Bob, she declared. What? I exclaimed. It's simple. Bob is our only child. We need a daughter-in-law who can produce an heir, she explained. My husband remained silent, offering no defense while I faced this criticism. Fuming with anger, I confronted him as soon as we got home. Why didn't you say anything back there? You're the one who keeps saying we should wait to have children. You need to stand up to your mother, I demanded. I'm sorry. Mom's just stuck in her old ways. She can't let go of the idea that we should have a baby right after getting married, he replied. I understand that, but can't you speak up for me with your mother? I implored. Like I said, Mom's stubborn. It won't make a difference what I say. Remember, Jess, just nod along and it'll blow over, he replied. But she threatened divorce if I don't get pregnant this year, I said. Don't worry about that. She's just trying to scare you, he assured me. By the way, not because of what she said, but I actually want us to start thinking about having a baby. Why are you so hesitant? I'm not opposed to it. I just want more time for just us two. Once we have a baby, you'll be completely focused on the baby and we won't have time alone, he explained, hugging me. I found his concern endearing and hugged him back. However, despite his words at home, he never supported me when we visited his parents. After that, his mother began calling me daily to inquire if I was pregnant yet. I grew weary of this constant pressure. I had never confided in her before to avoid putting my husband in a bad light, but I had reached my breaking point. Finally, I explained to her that Bob wasn't ready for children yet, but she brushed it off. That's because you're making Bob say that. He would never say such a thing, she insisted. That's not true. Bob is the one who wants to wait. I want a baby too, I asserted. Oh really, Bob, is that true? She turned to him. No, that's not exactly it. I mean, I do think we should enjoy just the two of us a bit longer, and Jessica is okay with that. He stumbled through his response. I was stunned by his words. While I agreed with Bob's desire to wait, his response made it sound like I had misled his mother about wanting a baby. As expected, his mother shot me a disapproving look after hearing his wavering answer. You see, even Jessica agrees with me. Now, please hurry up and have a baby. Don't keep us waiting, she insisted. In the end, I was the one who took the blame. When I confronted Bob at home about how he had spoken to me, he simply said, I'll handle it better next time, but never brought it up again. Lately, I've been feeling increasingly anxious, wondering why I had to endure such treatment. There was a reason behind Bob's reluctance to have children, though. The truth came to light on a particular day off. It was one of those days when Bob spent time with his friends, leaving me home alone. Initially, I lounged around, dreading the upcoming visit to my in-laws and anticipating more criticism from my mother-in-law. With Bob away, I decided to take a break and went shopping. A solo shopping trip, a rare treat for me lately, helped clear my mind, and I decided to take a break at a cafe with a terrace. There, something unbelievable caught my eye. It was Bob with an unfamiliar woman and a baby. I quickly ducked out of sight to avoid being seen by Bob. They seemed engrossed in conversation, and suddenly, Bob gently picked up the baby and comforted it with a smile. I couldn't comprehend what I was witnessing. My mind went blank as I continued to watch. He had said he was with friends, but was this woman one of them? Since we married, Bob had introduced me to all his friends, and I had never met this woman before. Then Bob kissed the baby on the cheek. Seeing Bob show such tenderness to a strange baby after claiming he wasn't ready for children with me pained my heart deeply. The thought crossed my mind that perhaps he didn't want children with me because he didn't truly love me. Tears blurred my vision uncontrollably. Could he be cheating on me? The mere idea constricted my chest even more. I snapped a photo of them together, appearing happy with the intention of confronting Bob later. Just as I was preparing to leave, Bob handed a white envelope to the woman and the baby, and they started to depart. I hurriedly made my way home, desperate to avoid encountering Bob. I'm going back to my parents' place for a while, my husband declared, his tone firm as he tossed the divorce papers in my direction. If that's how it's going to be, don't bother coming back. Take these papers and get out. That's how Bob ended our marriage, right then and there, with those papers hitting the floor between us. I picked them up silently and headed straight to City Hall to file them. Little did Bob know, he would soon regret his decision. My name is Jessica, 28 years old. I had been married to Bob, who is 2 years older than me, for just over a year. Before tying the knot, I worked as a freelance graphic designer from the comfort of home, while Bob thrived in the sales department. I met Bob 2 years ago when I was rebounding from a breakup. A mutual friend introduced us, and despite my initial reluctance to date, Bob, taken by my photos and story, asked me out, suggesting we start as friends. As Bob and I spent more time together, I found myself deeply touched by his kindness. Before long, I realized I had fallen in love with him. Once I expressed my feelings, we began dating. 6 months into our relationship, Bob proposed, and we joyfully married soon after. "Jessica, you're so fortunate," Bob often remarked, boasting about his status as the top salesperson at the company, popular among many. His confidence and charm initially captivated me, though I sometimes wondered about his need to flaunt it. Yet in those early days, I found it endearing. Love truly has a way of blinding us. I cherished my time with Bob, enjoying his company and the life we were building together. Although we hadn't yet started a family, I was content. However, a year into our marriage, an issue arose. "Hey Jessica, when are you going to give me a grandchild?" That was my mother-in-law, who had been pressing the matter ever since our wedding. Living just a short drive away, we visited them often for dinner, where I faced her persistent questioning month after month. "We're still young, so we decided to enjoy our time together," I explained calmly. My mother-in-law sighed audibly, her disapproval palpable. "You say you're young, but you'll be 30 soon. I'll give you a year to see how it goes. That should be enough time, right? You should start having babies soon, or it might become difficult for you. When I married into this family, I got pregnant right away. Besides, you're just idling at home, aren't you?" Since my early days of freelancing from home, my mother-in-law never truly acknowledged my work as a legitimate job. This perception persisted even after I married Bob. Moreover, our decision to postpone having children was primarily driven by Bob's desire for more time together as a couple. "No, that's not true. I work diligently from home. I've mentioned before that I earn almost as much as Bob," I defended. "Are you sure Bob isn't just covering for you? It seems like you're just passing the time," she retorted. "That's not fair. Bob, please say something," I pleaded, hoping for his support. "Ha! Oh, Bob rarely spoke up in such situations. His usual stance was, there's no point arguing with Mom. She doesn't listen to what I say, so it's best to let her talk and not take it too seriously." Despite my distress, I wished he would show a bit more support. Instead, he lounged on the couch, absorbed in his phone, barely engaged in the conversation. "Well, you can do as you please, but since you have plenty of time, you should fulfill your duties as a wife. If you don't have a baby within this year, I may have to ask you to leave, Bob," she asserted. "What?" I exclaimed. "It's simple. Bob is our only child. We need a daughter-in-law who can provide an heir." My husband remained passive, offering no defense while I faced her criticism. I was seething with anger as we returned home. "Why didn't you say anything back there? You're the one who keeps insisting we wait to have children. You need to stand up to your mother," I confronted him. "I'm sorry, Mom's just old-fashioned. She's stuck on the idea that you should have a baby right after marriage." "I understand that, but couldn't you at least speak up to her? Like I mentioned, Mom is stubborn. She won't budge no matter what I say. You know, Jess, sometimes it's best to just nod along and let it pass." "But your mother said if I don't get pregnant this year, she'll force us to divorce." "Don't worry about that. She's just bluffing." "Hey, not because of what she said, but I've actually been thinking about starting a family with you. Why are you hesitant?" "I'm not against it. I just want more time for us alone. Once we have a baby, you'll be fully occupied with the baby and we won't have much time together," he explained, pulling me into a hug. I found his concern endearing, so I hugged him back. However, despite his assurances at home, he never stood up for me when we visited his parents. After that, his mother began calling me daily, incessantly asking if I was pregnant yet. I grew weary of this relentless pressure. I kept silent about it, not wanting to paint Bob in a negative light, but eventually I reached my breaking point. I finally disclosed to her that Bob wasn't ready for children yet, but she brushed it off. That's just because you're putting words in Bob's mouth. He would never say something like that, she insisted. That's not true. Bob himself expressed that he wants to wait. I also want a baby, I countered. Really? Bob, is that true? She demanded. No, that's not exactly what I meant. I mean, I do want us to enjoy some more time together, and Jessica's okay with that too. He stumbled through his response. I was taken aback by his words. While I agreed with Bob's desire to wait, his response made it sound like I had misled his mother about our intentions regarding starting a family. As expected, his mother shot me a disapproving look after hearing his uncertain answer. See, you agree too. Now please hurry up and have a baby. Don't keep us waiting. In the end, I bore the brunt of the blame. When I confronted Bob at home about his words, he said, I'll handle it better next time, but he never brought it up again. Lately, I've been feeling increasingly anxious, wondering why I have to endure this. But there was a reason behind Bob's reluctance to have children. The truth came to light on a particular day off. I was home alone as Bob had his monthly outing with friends. Initially lounging at home, I had planned to visit my in-laws later in the evening, already dreading the inevitable nagging from my mother-in-law. With Bob absent, I took the opportunity to clear my mind with a solo shopping trip. Afterward, I decided to relax at a cafe with a terrace. It was there that I witnessed something unbelievable. Bob was seated with an unfamiliar woman and a baby. I quickly hid to avoid being seen. They appeared to be engaged in a pleasant conversation, and suddenly, Bob gently comforted the baby with a smile. I couldn't comprehend what was unfolding before me. My mind went blank as I continued to watch. Bob had claimed he was out with friends, but who was this woman? He had introduced me to all his friends since we married, and I had never met her. Then, to my surprise, Bob kissed the baby on the cheek. Seeing Bob affectionately dote on an unfamiliar baby, despite his insistence on not wanting children with me, deeply wounded me. Thoughts raced through my mind. Did he reject having children because he didn't truly love me? Tears blurred my vision as my heart clenched with the possibility of betrayal. Could Bob be cheating on me? I snapped a photo of them, capturing their apparent happiness, intending to confront Bob later. Just as I prepared to leave, Bob handed a white envelope to the woman and the baby, ready to depart. To avoid facing him directly, I hurried back home. 15 minutes later, Bob returned. I wasted no time in confronting him. You were out with friends, right? I questioned sharply. Yeah, I was. Why are you acting weird as soon as I get home? Bob replied defensively. Is this woman also a friend? I thrust the photo in front of him. Bob's expression paled instantly. How did you get this photo? He stammered, clearly caught off guard. I happened to come across you guys when I was out. Can you explain what's going on? Are you cheating? I demanded, my voice trembling with a mix of disbelief and anger. No, I'm not cheating, Bob quickly replied. Then what is it? And why did you give her a white envelope at the end? What's that all about? I pressed on, needing answers to make sense of the scene I had witnessed. Bob hesitated, his guilt evident in his expression as he began to explain reluctantly. Well, I meant to tell you eventually, but you know I was quite popular before I met you. I had a few flings and one of those women got pregnant. I was stunned into silence by Bob's revelation. This was the first time I was hearing this story, and it shattered my understanding of our relationship. I had been unaware of this situation even after we married. Apparently, by the time I found out, she was already 7 months pregnant, and it was too late for her to consider an abortion. I regretted ignoring her calls all this time. She didn't want to marry me, she just wanted me to acknowledge our child. Out of concern for the child growing up without a father, I agreed to acknowledge our child. We agreed that I would visit once a month. She's also struggling financially, so I've been helping her out with money. My world turned hazy as my husband's words sank in, and I sank to my knees. Jessica, are you all right? Bob rushed to my side, but I recoiled from his touch. Just hold on. Something doesn't add up here. She was 7 months pregnant around the time we got married. Does that mean you were involved with her while we were dating? I demanded, my voice trembling with disbelief and hurt. I already told you, it's not like that. I cut things off completely once I started dating you, Bob insisted. But we were already seeing each other, weren't we? I countered. We were, but we hadn't officially committed yet. Exactly. I can't wrap my head around this. You were pursuing a relationship with me, yet you were involved with someone else, I exclaimed, struggling to process the betrayal. Jessica, I wasn't certain about us at that point. I felt like I didn't have a choice, okay? I never expected her to get pregnant, Bob explained, his voice pleading. But you were still putting yourself in situations where she could get pregnant, weren't you? I pressed, tears welling in my eyes. Well, my husband suddenly faltered. I couldn't believe the irresponsibility my husband was showing. It infuriated me even more that he had kept silent about this for an entire year after our marriage. Could it be? Did you refuse to have a child with me because you already had one? I asked, my voice shaking with a mixture of disbelief and anger. My husband flinched at my words and then let out a bitter laugh. No, I plan to have children with you eventually, but like I mentioned earlier, I've been providing financial support to her every month. If we had a baby, I don't know how you would manage work-wise. Financially, it would be quite tough, so I thought I'd wait until I was a bit more stable before having a child with you. I was left dumbfounded by my husband's explanation more than I was angry. You need to tell your mother about this, I said firmly. What? Bob exclaimed, clearly taken aback. Isn't it obvious? She's always pressuring me about having children, and you act like you don't know or speak as if I'm the one who doesn't want children. No. I can't possibly tell my parents. They wouldn't understand why I have a child with another woman while I'm married to you. Isn't that just selfish? So, I've had to go along with your selfishness and bear the brunt of it. What are you saying? Are you saying you don't enjoy being with my family? I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying I shouldn't be blamed for something that's not my fault. I'm not saying I don't like my mother-in-law. Why are you acting like this? I've been apologizing, haven't I? And yet you're still complaining. Jessica, you're lucky to be married to someone as successful as me, and you're complaining just because I have a child. It's not a trivial matter. That's enough. There's no point in talking to you anymore. I need to think about my future, so I'm going back to my parents' house for a while. Excuse me, what is this all about? How can you even think like that? Do you expect me to accept everything just because I'm your wife? I was stunned by my husband's words. How could he believe that being his wife meant I had to easily accept something as significant as the existence of a child he had kept hidden? I was also furious that he hadn't disclosed this to his parents and had instead portrayed me as the problem in front of my mother-in-law. Do you honestly believe being a wife means unquestioningly accepting everything? Regardless, I'm going back to my parents' house. Perhaps you should take some time to reflect while I'm away. As I spoke and began to rise, he swiftly stood up, retrieved something from our bedroom, and hurled it towards me. If that's how you feel, then don't bother coming back. If you can't accept all of me, you're not my wife. Here are the divorce papers. They're already filled out. Take them and leave immediately. Yes, my husband had thrown divorce papers at me. You've already filled them out? What does this mean? I could understand if you were suggesting divorce, but having them ready beforehand. Did you plan this? I couldn't believe it, and I asked him. His response was a scornful laugh. You never know what life will throw at you, so it's best to be prepared for anything, right? I mean, I liked your face, but if you can't accept all of me, then I don't need you anymore. Fortunately, there are plenty of women who want to marry a guy like me. I just need to choose a good one from among them. In other words, I have plenty of options for a wife. His words ignited a fire within me. I needed time to process everything, especially the bombshell about his hidden child. Yet here he was implying I was replaceable. It was infuriating beyond belief. Ripping the divorce papers tightly, I shot him a glare. I never imagined you could stoop so low. Fine, I'll grant your wish and divorce you. I'll pack my things when you're not around. We probably won't see each other again. Goodbye. With that, I stormed out of the house, swiftly filled out the divorce papers, and submitted them to City Hall. But simply divorcing him wasn't enough. Once back at my parents' house, I recounted everything to my father. The following day, I took a day off work to gather my belongings. Though I mourned the shattered dreams of a happy marriage, I also felt relieved to have severed ties before investing more years with such a man. Wiping away my tears, I resolved to move forward. Just as I finished packing and the delivery service arrived to collect my belongings, my ex-husband called. Hello, Jessica. I was wrong. Forgive me. My ex-husband's voice on the phone was filled with desperation as soon as I answered. I couldn't help but smirk. Forgive you? After everything? Weren't you the one who initiated the divorce? I merely followed through on your decision, I retorted coolly. No, that was a mistake. I regret it deeply. You haven't submitted the divorce papers yet, have you? He pleaded. Of course I did. You handed them to me yourself, I replied, incredulous. What? Please, let's get married again. I can't live without you, Jessica. I almost chuckled at his feeble attempt. It seemed my conversation with my father had left my ex-husband in a tough spot, and rightfully so. My father held a significant position at a major client of my ex-husband's company, a fact my ex seemed to have overlooked in his haste to divorce me. I took satisfaction in knowing I had caused him some discomfort. Did you lose the contract with my father's company? That's unfortunate, especially for the ace of the sales department. It will be interesting to see how you handle this situation, I remarked casually. No, that's why I want to start over with you. There are plenty of replacements for me out there, right? You should try to find one. With that, I ended the call and allowed myself a broad smile. As I later learned from my father, my ex-husband had been demoted due to his role in losing the major client's contract. It was better than being fired, but his reputation within the company had taken a significant hit. After revealing the truth about his illegitimate child to my in-laws, they initially sought to reconcile him with the child's mother. However, due to her financial situation, they declined to pursue the remarriage, prompting my ex-husband to reach out to me again. Naturally, I refused. Who would willingly return to such a toxic environment? In contrast, life after divorce had treated me well. I moved back to my parents' home, focused on my career, and recently secured a significant contract with a major client. My work was flourishing, and while I kept an open heart for the possibility of meeting someone new in the future, for now, I was content focusing on my professional success. In the hospital for just a fracture. Pause. Acting like a child. You need to pull yourself together. Get up and make dinner, or else. We're done. How could anyone react that way to news of their wife in the hospital instead of expressing worry first? Most wouldn't get it, but this is my husband. I can't handle it anymore. I was at my wit's end, but there was someone even angrier with my husband than I was. That turned out to be his own parents. I wonder how he'll respond when they intervene. I'm Eileen, 29 years old. I landed a job at a well-regarded company right after finishing college, even though I don't work at the main office. My salary's quite good. My husband Matt is 32. We met at a client's office, and after a few meetings, he took the initiative to swap numbers. He later invited me to dinner, and after dating for a year and a half, we took the plunge when he proposed. Looking me in the eye, he said, I want to spend my life with you. Eileen, will you marry me? I'm happy, but are you sure about us? I want you, Eileen. You're the only one who makes me feel truly happy when we're together, Matt. Thank you. I want to spend my life with you, too. We were showered with blessings at our wedding and pledged to love each other forever. But 2 years later, if asked if love still exists between us, we couldn't confidently say yes. The reason is simple. Matt has changed in these 2 years. It started with something small. Since we got married, he began gradually shifting household responsibilities to me. We had agreed to split chores evenly, since we were both working before we got married. Despite this, Matt had stopped doing his share of chores like cleaning the bathroom and washing the dishes. Initially, he would reluctantly do them when I reminded him, but gradually, he stopped doing them altogether, even when asked. This increased my workload. Over time, extra hours at work piled up, eating into my sleep. Exhausted both mentally and physically, I decided to talk to Matt about it. When I got home, he was already lounging on the couch with a beer in hand. He didn't even acknowledge me. Despite my frustration, I approached calmly. Hey, Matt, there's something we need to discuss. Keeping his eyes fixed on the TV, he replied, What is it? I took the remote from his hand and turned off the TV. Hey, what are you doing? I was watching that. My husband jumped up, raising his voice. I told you I wanted to talk, right? It's important. Please listen. What a bother. So what's this about? I'm not exactly swimming in free time, you know. Free time, you've been glued to the TV and drinking beer. Holding back the urge to yell, I kept my cool and pressed on. Matt, you haven't been pitching in. around the house lately, have you? Why not? We agreed to share chores since we both work, didn't we? Isn't it obvious? Doing housework isn't my job. What do you mean? Cleaning the bathroom and doing dishes were your responsibilities, weren't they? Why should I, as a husband, have to do that? Those tasks are for women. Wait, are you serious? You were the one who suggested we split the chores. That was just for show to look like a good husband, isn't it clear? At our wedding, you've even told everyone, I'm so lucky my husband helps around the house. That was the whole point. Haha. So, you're saying you only helped out to improve your image during the wedding? With a smirk, my husband said, exactly. I was stunned by my husband's words, unable to comprehend such audacity. I'm exhausted from working late too. After getting home later than you, how could you say something like that to me? Just a reminder, you're not exactly a beauty queen, okay? What? Why are you bringing this up now? What does my appearance have to do with this discussion? Someone as ordinary as me should be grateful to have married someone like you, and you're complaining about simple chores. Know your place. Matt, my husband, shouted and turned on the TV without waiting for my response. He took a sip of his half-empty beer and casually shifted his focus away from me. I couldn't believe it. I'm working late too, so how could he say such things? No matter how I look at it, that's just wrong. I wanted to say a lot, but speaking up now would only lead to a fight. To calm myself, I went straight to bed after taking a bath that night. Since then, I tried repeatedly to talk to Matt, but was always brushed off. Every attempt at conversation was met with, don't tell me what to do, leaving no room for discussion. It seemed Matt avoided me, often leaving the house on his days off. Naturally, he neglected housework, even on my days off, leaving me to handle it all at once. Time passed, and as my job entered a busy period, my overtime hours increased significantly. Then Matt exploded again in anger. Hey, do you know what time it is? Where's my dinner? Matt started yelling the moment I returned home after a 3-hour overtime shift. I told you this morning I'd be working late today, so you should either cook or get takeout. What? Are you serious? Why do I have to cook? I wouldn't mind takeout, but do we even have money for that? Are you going to pay? Why should I? I'm busy too, so can you help out a bit? The mention of busy seemed to trigger him. He kicked the table leg and snapped at me with a furious look. I don't care if you're busy. You're always doing overtime because you can't manage your time. It's not that. My workload at work is really heavy right now. Don't act like you're all that just because you can handle a bit of work. You should just do what I tell you, you foolish woman. From that day on, I kept my distance from Matt to avoid his scolding. I prepared dinner ahead of time on days I knew I'd be working late. I also took on all the housework on my days off. Looking back, maybe I should have left him right then and there. But even then, I couldn't bring myself to truly hate him. Living like this, my burden gradually became too much to bear. After 2 months, both my body and mind were exhausted, and I lost my motivation for work. One day, on my way to work, I slipped on the subway stairs and fell. Though I remained conscious, I lay immobile, ripped by pain, and had to be transported by ambulance. Even upon reaching the hospital, the agony persisted, restricting my movement. After completing all the tests, the doctor entered my room and said, "You've fractured your leg and have bruises on your arm and back. You must be in a lot of pain." "Yes, I can't move as freely as I'd like." "You may be in this state for a few days. You look pale. Have you been feeling tired?" Anyway, I'll need to stay in the hospital for a while. Should I inform my family?" "Yes, please do." As I checked my phone, a message from a colleague awaited me. They had witnessed the ambulance taking me away from the subway station. They had already informed my workplace and contacted Matt, my husband. Exhausted from the day's events, relief washed over me, and I drifted into a deep sleep. Hours later, my phone buzzed, waking me up. Matt's name lit up the screen. Perhaps he was calling out of concern. With a mix of curiosity and apprehension, I answered, "Hello. Hey, where have you been? Come home right now." Confused by Matt's raised voice, I couldn't hide my confusion. "Wait, didn't you hear? What's going on?" "I had an accident at the station. I'm in the hospital now. I fractured my leg and they're admitting me." After a brief silence, he exploded. "Are you kidding me? Hospitalized? You're not using this as an excuse to avoid doing chores, are you?" "What? No. Why would I lie about something like this? Didn't the office contact you?" "No calls came through. Even if you're trying to trick me, it won't work. And even if it's true, it's not my problem. Just come back and make dinner, all right?" "What?" "Hold on, Matt." My words were cut off as he abruptly ended the call. How could he be so dismissive? Isn't it normal to be concerned when your spouse is hospitalized? Am I just here for Matt to delegate chores to? Exhausted, I lay back down on the bed. A message from Matt popped up on my phone. "If you're not coming home, I'll order takeout. You're paying." As soon as I read the stark, emotionless message, clarity washed over me. It was foolish to dwell on this any longer. Just as I was contemplating divorce, there came a knock on my hospital room door. When I saw who entered, I couldn't believe my eyes. My father-in-law and mother-in-law? What are you doing here? My in-laws lived far away and hadn't been close to Matt for some time. After we got married, I rarely saw them, maybe once a year at most. Their unexpected presence baffled me. Seeing my confusion, my mother-in-law spoke gently. "Eileen, we heard you were taken to the hospital in an ambulance. We were worried." "How did you find out?" "We received a call from your office." "Huh. But my office tried to reach Matt several times before contacting you. He didn't answer any calls, so they reached out to his childhood home, which was listed as an emergency contact. That's why you're here." Their unexpected kindness brought tears to my eyes. I was genuinely touched that they had come all this way out of concern for me. Holding back my emotions, I gratefully lowered my head to Matt's parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, thank you so much." "It's all right, dear. We're family. But where is Matt?" You mean he hasn't arrived?" "No." They seemed surprised by my answer. Just then, my phone rang. It was Matt calling. "Hello. What's wrong with you? Are you really not planning to come back?" Matt's sudden outburst caught Mr. and Mrs. Johnson off guard, and they exchanged worried glances. I gestured for them to stay quiet, placing my finger on my lips. They nodded silently, and I responded to Matt. "I've been admitted to the hospital. I won't be able to come home for a few days." "Hospitalized for a fracture. Stop being so delicate. Get yourself out of there and make some food." Mrs. Johnson looked ready to protest, but Mr. Johnson held her back. Matt continued ranting, unaware his parents were listening. "Just so you know, if you don't, we're getting a divorce, okay?" "A divorce? Are you serious?" "Of course. Why wouldn't I be? There's no reason to stay with someone like you who not only lacks attractiveness, but also neglects their household duties. Haha." His laughter over the phone left me speechless, stunned by his callousness. Isn't this going too far? He had always belittled others. I had to respond. "Hey, are you serious saying things like that? Your parents are furious." "What are you talking about?" His response was light-hearted, as if he thought it was a joke. I handed my phone to my in-laws and let them take over. They unleashed a fierce reprimand through the phone. "Matt, how could you say such things to Eileen? How can you be so heartless when your wife is in the hospital? We don't even recognize you as our son anymore. You're disowned." "Wait, hold on. It's not what you think. There's a reason for this. There's no excuse for your behavior. All you do is spew venom. I'm ashamed to call you my son. Apologize to Eileen right now." Feeling cornered by his parents, my husband suddenly turned on me. "Eileen, enough. Using my mom and dad like this. Exploiting them. It's your fault for not answering your company's call, isn't it? That's why they had to get involved. They called that number from your office. How misleading. Fine, I'll divorce you. Are you okay with that?" I released all the pent-up anger and resentment, standing my ground. "Divorce? Bring it on. I want nothing to do with a man like you. How long will you continue to think you're above everyone else? I have no reason to stay married to you anymore. If you understand that, never show your face to me again. Get lost, you piece of garbage." Following the divorce from my husband Matt, he initially hesitated, but with the help of my in-laws recommending a divorce attorney, we managed to separate amicably. The divorce brought significant changes to Matt's life. He began eating out for every meal, and his health declined. Unable to manage his laundry, I heard he showed up to work in wrinkled suits and shirts. Consequently, his reputation among coworkers took a nosedive. Did you hear? He didn't even visit his wife in the hospital. That's pretty messed up. Well, no wonder she left him. Ha ha ha. Over time, Matt began to skip work without giving any notice. With no one supporting him, it seemed inevitable that he would soon be pushed to resign. On the contrary, I was discharged from the hospital and returned to my usual work routine. Despite now being divorced, my job kept me occupied, lessening the impact more than I had anticipated. Moving forward, if I have the chance to meet someone new, I'll carefully evaluate them to ensure I find